So last night I watched the Joe Rogan podcast number 1006, which had Jordan Peterson and Brett Weinstein on. And normally I don't make videos like this because of the content matter. But in the podcast, they were talking about how modern man, especially in the Western world, is starting to approach a state of civil war. And there were a couple things that were said during the podcast that I found a little misleading, to say the least. And I felt like, last night I felt like I had to say something, which I don't normally do in comment sections, especially when it pertains to a topic that's this divisive as the one I'm about to mention. But I did bring it up. And it was a bit of a vague, combative statement that I don't normally do, especially in comment sections, because it's simply not the forum for that kind of discussion. And you'll see with some of the comments as to why I typically don't do that. And it's one of the reasons why I haven't made a video about this before, because it is one of those topics that, unless you are sufficiently educated on, it's hard to really wrap your mind around the statements that I made. So let me just show you the comment that I made last night. And I'm not the first person that said this. There's other people in the comment section that actually brought this up. I read the comment section after I watched the video. And this is, I was about less than an hour in before this really popped into my mind, because some things were said by Brett Weinstein that are a little disconcerting to me, because I think that they're so misleading is the real point. So my comment was, elephant in the room came to mind while watching this. And I thought to myself, Peterson knows. Every well-read person knows why these cycles keep happening. Because they were talking about these cycles of political divisiveness that happen. And I said, you can see how he dances gracefully, Peterson, around the subject by using euphemisms like left, socialist, communist, and Bolshevik. And I said, just read a handful of books, here's the divisive part, on Zionism and Judaism, and you'll get the picture. I didn't want to say that because of some of the replies that I got. And I just know how people react to that kind of thing. But I felt like I needed to say something, and I wasn't quite sure what to say last night because it was late, but I felt the need to do it. And what really drove me to say that was a statement at 12 minutes and 40 seconds into the podcast where Weinstein says, these patterns emerge cyclically. And he says the tyranny is the endgame of prosperity. A period of prosperousness where it seems that this thing is defeated once and for all. And when people don't expect it, it reemerges under a new flag. That is not necessarily true. I was a little puzzled by this, and I'm thinking to myself, well, tyranny is the endgame of prosperity. Is he implying that prosperous people somehow crave tyranny? That what they've built over the hundreds of years of productivity and relatively free market here in America, let's say, or in the Western world, that somehow we naturally lean towards more state control and an abandonment of individual free rights. That seems very contradictory to me when the default state of a society like that was built on those principles. Why would they succumb to something that is against their self-interests? And I was curious as to why he said that. And then I got a reason for it later on in the podcast. So at 1 hour and 52 minutes, he calls this radical polarization that we're experiencing in the Western world today. He calls it a biological pattern of history. And like I said, that somehow suggesting that human beings have a natural proclivity to destroy themselves after having reached a sufficient standard of living. That makes no sense to me. Why would people do that to themselves? But it wasn't just that he said that puzzled me. It's that statement on its own, that statement later on in the podcast contradicted something that he said earlier in the podcast. So at 1 hour and 27 minutes, he says Marxism gets sneaked in. So is it biological? Is it some sort of biological cyclical process? Or is it being sneaked in? Those are two very different things. What do you mean by sneaked in? By saying sneaked in, you're implying that somebody is sneaking something. So that's why I made the statement, because those things, this tendency that prosperous societies have towards slow degradation, is not the result of a natural human desire to destroy itself or for individuals to destroy their own individuality. It's not that, and it's not biological. And by him using words such as sneaking, he's also contradicting himself and implying that perhaps there is someone doing the sneaking. So which one is it? Is it that when people have a natural proclivity, that when someone does sneaking, that they're more susceptible to it? And how is that really biological? Because it seems like that if people were sufficiently informed, they wouldn't allow those people to do the sneaking. So that's why I made the comment that I made. Because of this one issue. That's the elephant in the room. And I don't know for sure. I would imagine that Jordan Peterson knows. I don't think Joe knows. And I definitely don't think that Weinstein knows, although he might. One, he wouldn't say anything if he did. And two, he may not say something for the same reasons that Jordan Peterson would not say something. And I'm reluctant to say that I would respect that, because when they're talking about political radicalization that we're seeing, this political polarization that we're seeing nowadays that could possibly lead to what they're talking about in this podcast, which is civil war, I don't know, maybe it's time to actually say it. Maybe it's time to actually make the comment. Maybe it's time for everyone to step out of their comfort zone who are a little informed on this topic. And I don't see what the problem with that is. What is the problem with speaking the truth? Well, the problem is, especially with someone in the position of Jordan Peterson, he has a lot to lose. Someone like Joe Rogan has a lot to lose. Someone like Brett Weinstein has a lot to lose. There are many other people in the quote truth movement that have a lot to lose because they've gained so much over the years by speaking the truth. Someone like myself, I don't have that status. I don't have the income. I don't have that level of dependency on a reputation so much as to silence me when it comes to times like these and having to say something that's true. And I really don't see what the problem is, because what I'm about to say, it goes on way beyond a label, such as I said in the comment, Zionism or Judaism. It goes way past that. When I got into all the material I'm about to cover back in 2015, it took me the better part of that year to cover all this material. And when I did that, I thought, oh, this is really important. This label is very important. We got to label these people and point them out. But that's not the case. I think it's important to know. And I think that people that do know, that may know it, like Peterson and other people, I'd really rather not name them, but he was in this particular podcast, so I feel like it's fair. These labels are not necessary. That it goes beyond that, and I think that they understand that, which is why they're addressing not so much the labels as that the ethics. But I think it's important for people to know. And I think it's important that people do get the big picture, because when you do understand this, the last 2,000 years of history makes so much sense. They make so much sense. And I think it's disingenuous, and I don't want to say cowardly, because it's not. It's what they're doing is strategic, and I understand that. But like I said, I don't have the skin in the game, so I don't really have a problem with coming out and making a comment like I made in the comment section or making this video, because like I said, it's easier for me to do. And one of the reasons is that people don't do it is because of the tremendous amount of backlash that they get because of the propagandizing that they've experienced during their lives. And it was mere minutes after I posted the video that I got some of that backlash. And it sucks, man. I don't like when people do that kind of stuff. And when you put yourself out there and you make a video or do something like that and people come and shit all over what you've been doing, even though you're as rational and competent as you can possibly be, or at least as much as you're trying to be in that moment, it doesn't feel good when people come and say that. But you got to keep in mind that if you're in the right, if you're right, the truth is always on your side. The universe itself is on your side, and you don't have to be brought down by these people. So anyway, the first comment was, the guy said, what are you talking about? And then the second guy said, get the fuck out of here. And then, which kind of surprised me, the third comment I got, can you recommend any of these books, please? And that kind of blew me away a little bit. And it was actually encouraging to get someone like that, because normally you'll get the first two responses. So the first response is ignorant, passive, where the guy doesn't know, what are you talking about? Then you get the second one, which is ignorant and aggressive. But then I got the third one, which is really encouraging, which is ignorant, curious. And that was really encouraging to me, just to hear someone say that right out of the gate. And then the comment after that is, dude, if you're going to make a claim, you need to say what books you're talking about. And I was like, that's fair. So as late as it was, I went down to my computer and I got my reading list together, and I went ahead and put it together for these guys. And I just said that these are in no particular order. And just as a little disclaimer with some of these books, I don't agree with all the authors on all the material they've ever written. I don't agree with everything they've ever written or every conclusion they've ever come to. I read their material, I benefit from their research, and I come to my own conclusions. There are some of these people that have written books that come to conclusions that I don't agree with, and that's okay. That's what relative free speech is all about. And I think it's important that people keep that in mind. So there's about 30 books on this list. I'm just going to go ahead and scroll through it so you guys can take a look. And I'm just going to read the last comment, and that's pretty much going to close this out. And the guy replied, thanks, I'll research them. And then this guy said, your creepy, awful anti-Semitism isn't welcome. You know, it's ad hominem attacks. And then there was this one guy that left a message that said, the leftist, socialist, communist, Bolshevik Jews are simultaneously the wealthy, capitalist, international 1% bankers. You're suffering from doublethink, my friend. Get your head out of your ass. Anyone with half a brain can see that all this anti-Semitic conspiracy BS is debunked right there in that comparison, assuming that comparison is logical or accurate. It doesn't hold up in the slightest. He's implying that there aren't people that have a political ideology that utilize the capitalistic system to their own ends. History does not bear that out. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't have such a thing as private central banking. It's that simple. So it can be both. So your point does not debunk anything. It simply points out an actual dynamic that's at work here. And then the second paragraph says, almost every book you listed are outdated books that are 100 plus years old, not academic or cited in any sense, and even straight conspiracy theories written by open anti-Semites. These delusions and conspiracies are a result of medieval hysteria, xenophobia, superstition, religion, and I guess he meant resentment. And then the next guy, which I thought was kind of cool, he said, there's no need for the insults, just give the information, dude. All right, so my response to him was, and this is going to sum up the video. So he said, like all stereotypes, they don't apply to everyone being stereotyped. That being said, stereotypes exist for a reason. There's no doubt that a disproportionate number of their population play a pivotal role economically, politically, in the media, and entertainment, which is proven. You can easily prove that. The problem is with ideology rooted in an ethical system or lack thereof. The problem with the political systems you listed, and he said leftist, socialist, communist, Bolshevik, notice that he didn't distance the Jews from those ideologies. There is no doubt a disproportionate number of their population play a pivotal role in all these areas. That's not what matters. Honestly, who cares? Good for them. The problem is with ideology rooted in an ethical system or lack thereof. The problem with the political systems you listed is a moral one, where the state gains an ever-increasing control of the population. That is the narrative that has been pushed over the years and is happening now. So it's not a conspiracy to simply observe that a small number of influential people that share these political views are pushing a narrative in various sects of society. The books I listed explain what has happened historically and explain the ideological reasons why those people are motivated to do what they do. Most of those books were published within the last couple decades. Even if they weren't, I don't see why it matters if it's still applicable. I've read all but 3 of them, and they are heavily cited, so don't give me crap when you haven't read one, and this bothers me to no end. When I cite a reference, and they still have the temerity to come out. I mean, I couldn't even imagine doing this, to come out when someone cites a reference. If I have no familiarity with that reference whatsoever, to come out and say someone's got their head up their ass. He was completely wrong. Most of these books were published in the last couple decades. So anyway, I said, I've read all but 3 of them. They were heavily cited, so don't give me crap when you haven't read one. And then I end with a question. Why do you think all this delusion, conspiracy, medieval hysteria, xenophobia, and resentment started? Why has it survived 2,000 years? Why would anyone give a shit and waste their lives bothering with things that only result in condemnation and ridicule if it wasn't important enough to mention? What I'm trying to say is that there is a reason for this. This isn't This isn't a biology. It's not economics. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to even do with Jews. I say that just as a point of fact that these people happen to be Jewish, that are in these influential sects of society, these individual parts of society, and they push a political agenda. That's all there is to it. And the ultimate result of that political agenda is some modicum of control. And it has wild swings. It starts with a constitutional government that we started this country with, and it goes all the way to more and more control, into absolute and complete political domination that you see in communism, and socialism is a stepping stone to that. I'm just going to read off my notes here. I wrote last night, I said, I don't care if you're a Jew or black or trailer trash or what. If they're doing a good job in politics, media, banking, and entertainment, I don't have a problem with that. But the problem is, they're in control of these sectors of society, and they're not doing a good job. In politics, they lean left, and they grow government. In entertainment, they promote violence and hedonism, immorality. In the media, they distort the truth to adhere to a leftist narrative or a bigger government narrative. In finance, they hijack the monetary system in the form of usury, where there is more debt than money to pay it back, which is a form of slavery. And in politics, they are in the position to use the power of government, which is violence, to again push the leftist agenda, which is more government control. And communism is just government run amok. Absolute power over all society in the name of equality. And what ends up happening is that everyone but the government is equally oppressed. And some people have called this the totalitarian tiptoe. They slowly, over time, get more and more control of different aspects of society until eventually they're able to have enough influence to push forward their agenda of control. And we've seen it time and time again over history. It's no wonder why you see this sort of, quote, anti-Semitism throughout history. It's ubiquitous. And it goes back 2,000 years. Perhaps even more. So the main point here is that it's important that people keep an open mind, that keep perspective on the situation at hand, and know that there is a cause for this. And the biggest elephant in the room is a lack of morality. And if people in their individual lives exercise morality, it doesn't matter who's in control. Forget who's in control. It doesn't matter. It's important to note, okay? And there's no reason to call somebody an anti-Semite for that. There's no reason to call somebody a Nazi for that. I don't even know what that means. I mean, I know what they mean, of course, but it's not an argument is the point. So, check out some of those books. And those are by no means all the books that have ever been written on this subject. Those are just the ones that I've been exposed to. So I just think that it's important that people keep an open mind about this. I think it's important that people look into this and to understand this. But most importantly, I think it's important that people understand the bigger picture. That is, that all of these problems that we have in society are the result of moral adolescence. And that if people were mature, morally knew the difference between right and wrong, that these kind of problems wouldn't even happen to begin with, because people would defend it. They would know what is good and what is not, and they would defend it with all their heart and all their soul. And if you're interested in that moral argument, I look into people like Stefan Molyneux, I look into people like Ayn Rand, and there's many other philosophers that have covered these topics. But if you're interested, there's a condensed version of all these put together on my channel. It's called How to Fix the World. And it basically covers everything that you need to know about ethics, and that's something that I'm definitely going to be doing more on in the future. So thank you for your time and attention, and keep reading.